As typical, minding my own business. By the way, do you love the blue light on the fish? Huh?
I do.
Oh my goodness. That's only because it broke. And I was like, oh, the blue light's kind of cool. Reminds me of a day in life where I would have done that on purpose. Good morning,
I
my
would
friend.
have done that on purpose at some point after many never mind. I'll stop
Yeah.
there.
Many too many's.
Yeah,
Good morning,
many too
sir.
many. Good morning, my friend. How the heck are you?
I'm good. This is Dewey Freeman. I'm Mark Sylvester. We are the Elder Council, and we've outgrown our need for lava lights and disco balls in our house.
Sort of.
If you don't know what a lava light is, Google it, and you'll see lava lights and ocean in a bottle. That was the other thing.
Yeah,
Did you
that's
ever
right.
remember?
Yes.
I used to make ocean in a bottles in there was these little a little mold you could get at the craft store that you would pour resin in. It was about the size of a golf ball and it had a little filler on it. And then you would make, I don't know, 20, 30 of them in like a purple color and then pop them out of the molds and make these grape clusters. It was a very 70s thing, these great clusters of resins as a design, sell them at swap meets and stuff. Instead, what I did was I took those and I would fill them with equal parts of mineral spirits and water. And I put a drop of blue in the water. The mineral
Mm.
spirits and the water don't mix. And it would fill all the way to the little top. And I'd use a syringe to pull any air bubbles out. And then I would seal it and then dip it in wax and put a little brass holder on it and then put it on a necklace. And so you could take and flip it and it would spin and they wouldn't mix, and it was best viewed under the influence. I've
Best
just
enjoyed
outed
under the
myself.
influence. You just outed yourself big time, my friend. Probably nobody that's listening to this would ever even think of doing that
Oh no,
or
not
be under
even
the
close.
influence at all.
It has been it's been a few days since we typically don't do topical things so that people could listen to this at any time. So with that in mind, we just had an initiation, and it was an intense few days for several men, 20 plus men. And it got me thinking about initiations in life and whether it's more like a thing that you go to and you go through this very, very, very deep spiritual experience, emotional experience, mental, physical experience. It could be, Navy SEAL school. It could be, bud training. It could be anything. Going to TED for a week is like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in the case of the initiations with Traver, you really try to do it full mind body, right? So it's
Right.
really, really balanced. And one of the things that I've always paid attention to was that, well, we call it the after part around here. Okay, it's a week later, it's 2 weeks later, it's 3 weeks later. What's stuck? And that's what I'd like to talk about today, because I think the amount of time and energy, psychic energy, that we put into those kinds of events to improve our lives, that at least in my case, my bar is set so low, Dewey. I say, if I can get one thing out of that, that's a win. And that's one thing.
Out
And
of
over
initiation or out of just things in
going
life?
for a 3 or 4 day, immersive
Mm.
experience, whatever that is, are you changed? 100%, 100%. But how much of it is so in the moment, you're in such a flow state that the only way I would think I can remember it is like watching a video of it. Does that
Mm.
make sense?
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like doing improv.
Yeah, the piece that when I get feedback from the men who have done it, it's more of of an experiential memory versus a what I would call a cognitive memory.
Okay, there you go.
You know, like if somebody says to me, "Dewey, what do you have for breakfast?" I go, and I think, and I sort of see it, and yeah, scrambled eggs and some home fries with little cheese on it, and some fruit or something like that. But that's not the kind of memory that we walk away with when we have immersed ourselves into something. Um,
Is it fair to say it's a somatic memory?
yeah, I would say it's a somatic memory. And if you allow yourself to really step into it, it's like a whole body, whole being memory. Um, what's interesting, I just thought of this. This is a little bit of a side piece, but um, if our only memories from something like that are sort of those cognitive memories, there's probably a really good chance we didn't allow ourselves to fully immerse ourselves.
Mm.
Um,
Hmm.
so I guess one of my questions is, and I don't know that we need to totally jump on this one way or the other, but how many men are given the opportunity to fully immerse themselves into something, but then don't allow themselves to go there?
What comes to mind is you've given yourself a gift of time to participate in something. You've cleared your calendar, you cleared the deck, you've gotten on a plane, you've done what you needed to do to be in physically in the space. To your point, are you mentally in the space?
Right. And are you
And
there
yeah,
in with your heart?
which is a little different than being present. We've talked about being present a lot, like
Mhm.
really like stop. Like for me, I have to do a full stop. I bend my knees, I soften my knees. I imagine my feet having roots going down to the center of the earth. I am now the home tree. I can't be moved. I actually even do this where
Mhm.
I'm like, okay, I'm very grounded. I guess the way to say that. And then I can sink into being present and letting that stuff wash over me or whatever note things as we've talked about before.
Mhm.
It's almost like if you could figure out a way to become in a meditative state, which doesn't mean you're quiet or your eyes closed, but you're in a meditative state. Is that
Right.
fair to say?
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. So one of the things, so let's talk about initiation a little bit. Um, and what you mentioned was also what do we do, and maybe what we might call aftercare? Is that the
Yeah.
word? Like
He-
an after?
it's I think we all have an experience of there is the end. It's the last act at the 4-day concert at Woodstock. It's the last thing and it's like, okay, now I'm back to regular life. And in some cases we want to extend the half-life of that. Sometimes the half-life it lasts till the time you get on the plane.
Mhm.
So what are strategies for extending that because you felt it? A, you just want to keep feeling like that because it felt so good, but B, you want to make sure that's deeply integrated because it's
Mhm.
so important to you.
Mhm. Um, well, one of the biggest things that, when we are go through an initiation, regardless of whether it's something like a 3 to 5 day uh, retreat or initiation with men, whether it's a major experience of of something that we don't normally go through, those kind of things. when we go into those situations, we go in for the purpose of having our homeostasis disturbed.
Hmm. Hmm.
And by that, what I mean is, Mark, you and I have talked about you have a particular kind of routine that you get up in the morning and do. And I have a particular kind of routine that I get up in the morning and do. And it's almost if not that I purposely do this, but it's like I will get up at I usually get up between 5 and 5:30. And by 5:45 I'm doing X, Y, and Z. And by 6:03 I'm doing something else. It's almost like by my routine I go, oh, it must be about a quarter of 7. And then I look at my watch and it's like 16 minutes till 7. Those kind of things. Then I do this and then I go up and I feed the horses and, that routine. That becomes our homeostasis. And we generally have a routine for our day. When we put ourselves into a situation, and sometimes most of the time, hopefully it's voluntary. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes we're responding to something. But our homeostasis is disturbed.
Hmm. Hmm.
And what's interesting is to learn something new and to move into a creative process, our homeostasis has to be disturbed on some level.
I'm reminded of a quote, and I think this is exactly what you mean. Confusion means you're about to learn something.
Yes, very yes. If you allow yourself, and part of what I talked about actually at this initiation with some of the men was to enjoy the confusion, to enjoy the upsetness, to enjoy that disturbance.
We've talked about that. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And many times, and people, when I say that, they look at me and go, you are so fucking crazy.
No, I'm an elder.
I'm sitting here. Yeah, I'm sitting here on the couch sobbing over the loss of a relationship, and you're telling me to enjoy it, and I'm kind of say yes, I actually am.
Yes.
Which is also a disturbance of homeostasis. We grow through the process of having our homeostasis disturbed. Now, there's some times where it gets overly disturbed and it sends us into a place where we struggle with it. But um, and that's maybe next week's conversation. But then when we come out of that, we are, and you called it perhaps a spiritual experience, and sometimes it truly is. And but it's whatever you want to call it, it's clearly an altered state.
Yeah.
Especially when we're with a group of people, say 20, I think we had 26 men at this last gathering. When 26 men have their homeostasis disturbed, it changes a lot for a lot of people. But it's also an altered state. So when we leave that, like we were up in Jefferson from Wednesday at 2 or 3 in the afternoon till Sunday at 1-ish. So everybody left in an altered state, including the leaders, by the way, because we cannot ask for homeostasis to be disturbed without it disturbing ours on some
Correct.
level.
Correct.
But one of the things to expect is that nobody will get what we just went through. There's no way to go home and explain to your partner what just happened in any way that they really get it. Now, one of the things we ask is that there's a huge high level of confidentiality, but we do encourage people to go share their experience, not somebody else's. But even if we go and say, yeah, I sat on the couch and I sobbed for 3 hours and somebody go, and it changed my life. And somebody's going to go, okay, but what were you crying about? Well, I don't really know what started it. Well, actually, I don't, someone looked at me. Yeah. And people aren't going to get it.
Right.
And the only way and it's because it's an experience, not a um, it's an experience with our whole being, and we're experiencing it with in a relational space with 20
Right.
plus other people.
Right. So, couple of things. One is, there's a lot of different ways to bond with people, and one of them's, crisis bonding, and going through a similar situation bonding and all that kind of stuff,
Mhm.
and that creates bonds that will last forever, right? So
Yeah.
there's that, right? There's, the alumni of this particular initiation will, very good chance they'll be friends for the rest of their lives. Um, it's the coming back, and it's such a profound experience, which is why I feel so lucky the last 20 years. Every one of those kinds of things I've attended with Kimberly. So I
Mhm.
don't come back. And we even joke, when when you get back to your room after the end of an intense day, it's 9 or 10 o'clock. I said, it would normally have been this time when I would have called home and say, so what'd you do? Well, I sat on a couch and I cried for 3 hours. Oh, as opposed to going through it with your partner
Right.
is, I've not had a partner like that. So
Mhm.
each one of
Mhm.
those experiences is profoundly different. One of the things though is when you come back and someone says, so how was it? Or they knew you were going and they want to hear, and it feels like 1/100th of it can't even be communicated. And it feels that feels a bit frustrating for the teller. Like
Mhm.
I can't get across how big it was. Even me saying that isn't big enough. And I find myself just saying, you know what? I'm never going to be able to capture it. So I'm just going to go, hey, it was great week, learned a lot. How are you? I just turn it around. I
Mhm.
deflect. I
Mhm.
tend to deflect.
Well, and we can do that, but here's what I would encourage. So let me back up just slightly. When we get home and we try to explain, one is that we really have to get that we were in an altered state for a number of days. And it will take us some time to reintegrate into back to our normal lives, so to speak.
Achieve homeostasis.
Yeah, to achieve homeostasis. And hopefully the idea is that homeostatic process will be different than what it was before you went into the
Mhm.
initiation. The way to really share what that is by living your transition and living your change.
Hmm.
That's how to share it. For instance, let's say, and if I go and I'm a participant and then I come back to my sweetheart and I go, yeah, man, I've changed and I'm going to change our relationship. And they might say, well, how? And I'll say, well, I, I'll be nicer to you, or I got that this or that. And so many times what happens is that we say that and the person on the other end goes, okay, but it doesn't get carried through. It doesn't get carried through on a level that can be felt. And so the actual relational process is coming home and saying, yeah, I've changed, and these were some of my experiences. And what I'd really like you to do is be open to experiencing me different. And what I'm going to try to do is bring my experience into this relationship through my experience and behavior with you. And if we're able to do that, even a little bit, or whomever is on the other end will begin getting it. Whomever is on the other end will begin getting and feeling that change. So does that make some sense?
Yeah, the words 100%. The words, actions speak louder than words comes
Mhm.
through my mind as especially um as it relates to your closest relationships where what you've done is gone to work on how you are in a relationship, right? If that was
Yes.
a specific goal, was I need to work on that, then the it's like the training happened over a very intense part of time. Like, I'm gonna hammer that steel and get it, but now I have
Mhm.
to use it. Right now I have
Right.
to use that thing, and you're gonna be a little woogity at first because you're not really sure how do I use this new thing called being nice, or whatever that is. Right.
Called being nice.
Right, whatever that thing is, how do I use that? I'm gonna stumble a bit, but I'm committed to integrating that new way of reacting or not reacting or
Mhm.
being, whatever that thing is for me that was important to work on. And this is where you wanna have a relationship, I know I do, where I can just say, "I need to know you've got my back." Because
Right.
I'm going to take some risks right now. I'm going to step into the stage of life. I'm going to step in a stage of our relationship, and I'm going to fumble a bit, but I'm going to have the grace to give myself, like, we've said this before, you have time. You have time
Mhm.
to integrate this because the payoff is going to be, I'm going to be better. We're going to be better
Mhm.
as a result. And I think there's uh, what one might strive for is a heightened level of intentionality to say, this was so important to me that the work, it didn't stop when I got on the plane. It started when I got on the
Right.
plane.
Yes. So I love this last piece that you just said about it just started. That's why it's called an initiation. We're initiating a new process in our life.
Mm.
It's the beginning. So let me follow up with what you're saying, because here's what typically happens. Somebody will go through an initiation of one sort or another. And what I want to say here is sometimes initiations are pre-planned and, a 4 to 5 day event of deep dive into personal work. Sometimes there are things that happen in our lives that we have to uh, really dig deep to be able to go through. So I just want to put out that initiations can happen on many different levels,
Formal and informal.
formal and informal, planned and unplanned.
Yeah.
And but typically we go from this altered state, we work on integrating into a new place, new way of being, and in all honesty, that lasts about 7 days.
Mm.
And then at that 7 to 10 day mark, we have to consciously hang on to what we'd learned. So here's what happens. and this happens, I'm going to use a analogy of alcoholism. So let's say somebody goes into treatment for alcoholism. They do anywhere from 7 days to 30 days. And they come out and they're not drinking and they have worked their ass off and they're getting through stuff. When they go back into the system that they came out of, whether it be a family system, work system, group of friends, that system, when they go back in and they're different, that's going to change the system. That's what happens. But the system is trying to go back to their original homeostasis. So that system is actually going to try to pull you back in
Sure.
to drinking. And when somebody goes through treatment for an addiction, if they get pulled back into the system, it takes about 7 to 10 days. And then everyone goes, well, yeah, you didn't do it right, and blah, 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 blah. And that's not true. It's just what happened was the bigger system overwhelmed the smaller system of the individual. Your point of that the system has to get your back
Right.
is gigantic. It's gigantic. And because if the person goes through treatment, comes home 7 to 10 days later, and the system gets your back, what they do is they quit drinking too.
Mm.
For instance, I'm not saying that's, you know, what their thing is to go, you know, when the system is working with you, it's like, what can I do to support your change? What can I do to support what happened? What can I do to, you know, what way do I want to go to be able to allow the system to change, to allow you to continue to change? And so it becomes this relational process. But to your point of, when you're coming out and I think it's absolutely beautiful that you and Kimberly go to things together, because then you end up getting each other's back.
Yep.
But let's say one or the other of you went through something and one of you came out and like the initiation or like a learning trip or like a TED week or whatever it is, and you come in, the other person is curious enough to go, and I mean, I know Kimberly well enough to know that if you went through that when you got home from whatever that is, Kimberly would be incredibly curious. And, what happened? How can I get your back? How can I support you with this? How, all of those things. And so, for us to get what I would call aftercare, the system that we're going back into needs to have our back, and we need to have their back, whomever or whatever that is.
In addition to that, what I found helpful, because my bookcase behind me is the whole bottom row is notebooks from workshops,
Mm,
and that's where they live, on the bookcase. They don't,
mhm.
right? We do that. We get our notebook and we fill the thing up with all the great stuff we never want to forget, and then we put it on the shelf, and the half-life is whatever the half-life is. And I noticed that about myself years ago. And so then what I decided to do was, I have this weird fixation on the number 21. And I know from a behavior modification point of view. So the whole idea here is we're trying to modify our behavior in one way or another, right? I want to behavior modify. So if I do a thing intentionally 21 times, like 3 times a day for 7 days, or seven
Mm-hmm.
times for 3 days, or once for 21 days for 3 weeks, whatever
Mm-hmm.
it
Hmm.
is, my magic number happens to be 21. I will never forget it.
Right.
That's just me. I think it's universal, but I'm just speaking for myself. So what I will do is, anybody who's been to our home knows we have these in every room, and we have stacks of them, and there are stickies all over the place, very specifically to write a thing down that is important enough to where it needs to stick up until it falls off. And at that
Right.
point, it's never, I'm looking at one right now that says one next action. And it was to learn how to get over overwhelm. You have
Mm,
so many things to do, like I can't do them all. Okay, what's the one next action you need to take? Do
mm-hmm.
that. What's the one next action after that? So now this has been up here for a long time. It could probably go away. So when I think about what were the sticky notes of
Mm-hmm.
that event, what are the 3 things that I never ever, like, I don't want to tattoo them on my body, but I never ever want to forget them because they're really important. And in
Right.
the case of in a relationship, your partner sees your sticky notes
Mm.
and knows what you're paying. Oh,
That's a really good idea. I really like that. That
well,
gives them some insight into what's happening
this
inside
is
you.
what he's working on,
Hmm.
right? He's working on that thing.
Right.
And I've found that works. It, it came from I had a sabbatical back in the day, and part of my sabbatical was learning how to dive. So I called it a
Mm.
scubatical. But I also went, and I'd never taken golf lessons, so I went and took golf lessons. And he goes, "Okay, I want you to do this 21 times." I says, "Why 21?" He goes, "Because it's a magic number or something like that."
Hmm.
And so the numerologists in the who are listening right now are shaking their heads violently up and down. Yes, of course it is.
Hmm.
But I found that works, and to know this is the 16th time I'm doing this thing, that integrates that into the bones.
So the 21 times, actually, I think that that's been studied. I don't know
Mm,
that, so I'm not going to jump on it, but I think that's been studied. And I've also heard the number 19. So it's somewhere around 19 to 21 times is we form a new habit or we break a new habit, an
right.
old habit. Um, but here's very likely what's going to happen. And actually, after this last initiation, one of the last things I said was, um, and I didn't use the number 21, but since we're talking about that, I'll incorporate that. Um, what I said is that you're going to walk out of here with the very best intentions. Everybody does, and everybody did. And you will make an attempt and you will begin to step into whatever your intention is, and you will blow it. That is an absolute guarantee. So let's say you do something 12 times, and on time 13, you go, "Oh, man, I just fucked that up." In your, from your perspective, do you start over on the 21? Or do
Mm,
you go, "Oh, okay, I missed 13. I'll redo 13 and I'll continue
I
toward
I
21."
have I give myself more grace.
Yeah. So talk about that a little bit because I think that's a really big deal.
Well, we did a show on this around
Yes, we did.
failure, right?
Mhm.
So I've completely reframed failure, and thanks to you. It's now called trial and error,
Exactly.
right? It's trial and error. Hey, tried it. Hmm, that one didn't work. And so the trick, the trick is, do you recognize that as an opportunity to train?
Ooh, I like it.
So that's not mine. That's Grandmaster Rick, who everything in life with this young man is an opportunity to train. So to the point,
Mhm.
on that 13th time, it's an opportunity to train. Okay, let me just look at that a little bit. What did I do? Oh, I forgot to center myself. Oh, I forgot to take kind of a cleansing breath ahead of time. Oh, I didn't listen. Oh, I didn't. Okay, no judgment. Now I'm using the meditative term of noting.
Mhm.
Note my behavior, don't judge my behavior.
Mhm.
Just note it. Oh, wow, you didn't do this, or you spoke first instead of shutting up and listening to that. Whatever the thing was, note it, don't judge it, learn from it. It's an opportunity to train. So on the 14th time, you're actually a little better, I think, through that intentional stop and review, that little micro after action review that you did.
Mhm.
What worked,
Mhm.
what didn't work, what needs work, right? We've talked about that.
Right.
Right. So it's at a very micro level, you can apply that. What worked, I was present, good. What didn't work, I spoke too quick, or I spoke too long.
Mhm.
What
Mhm.
what needs work? Um, I need to just shut up for a second, let them talk.
Yeah,
Okay, good.
got it.
Noted, noted. Not bad boy, bad mark. Noted. Okay,
Noted.
that's doing the work, dude.
Yeah, that's doing the
That's
work.
doing the work.
So, um, with that, are there any last and that piece of that's doing the work, are there any last comments you would give to the listeners from any initiations that you have experienced either in the past or more recently?
Um, in our house, we have a thing called favorite frames. You've been in a Kimberly event when the very last thing, we stand in a circle and we favorite frames, like what are some pictures you would have taken,
Mhm.
and they become the frame. So having just been through looking at my family photographs from multiple generations and thinking about that, that's a favorite frame that captured a moment in time. I go into events knowing I'm going to be asked what my favorite frames were. So I consciously take the mental photograph I'll never lose, right?
Mhm.
So I take that photograph, and I'm very conscious of this, by the way. And I'm like, okay, click, boom, filed. And I have that one. That one's never going to go away. And I can recall it's not on a bookshelf. It's not on a sticky. It's where it needs to be. And think about, so what I would do is I would give myself some quiet space now after initiation and sit and say, what were my favorite frames from that?
Mhm.
Because you can still recall those, because they're still in RAM, if you will. They haven't
Mhm.
gone
Mhm.
away. And then call out 8 to 10 of them and do and really work at remembering 8 to 10 from the, and it's very hard, especially when you're in flow state. However, you can do it. You can totally do it.
Mhm.
You just, if you close your eyes and put yourself back in the space, you can totally do it. And like, what were those things? Oh, yeah, I remember that smile or that look that triggered the thing that got me to cry for 3 hours on the couch. Like,
Exactly.
what was that? So I would say to get in touch with that, because these initiations in our life, there's so very, very, very few of them, and they're so very, very important that they're too important to forget.
Right. Too important.